all reforms were political. Some are moral. Alcoholism, prostitution, divorce, and immigration are all attacked as problems in our society. You have to understand, alcohol is a major destructive force in society at this time. People drank more than 3 times as much on average as we do today. So however much you think a problem of alcohol is today, well, it was 3 times that back then in terms of consumption anyway. And it hit the lower class the hardest. It was the leading cause. Now I want you to imagine something that is the leading cause of all these things, and you tell me you wouldn't attack it. It's the leading cause of violence, murder, rape, both in and out of marriage, orphans, broken homes, poverty, industrial accidents, and almost any other social ill you can imagine. Women demanded prohibition, they had been doing so since the 1850s at least, to protect themselves. In a time when a woman could not really seek a divorce or have her own career and support herself, she was tied to her man. And if you were tied to a man, be it your husband or your father or anybody else that you were beholden to, and that person had an alcohol problem, it basically wrecked your life. And it probably wrecked your children's life too. And so I encourage you not to think of this as a bunch of prudes saying, I don't want people to have a good time. I encourage you to think of this as a bunch of women who are being beaten and raped and having their children beaten and raped because the husband was an alcoholic and there was no attempt to do anything about it, or, and this is important to understand, to give the woman another option rather than to stay with the man. So I think that's really important if we want to understand prohibition, because I don't think we understand it very well at all today. Employers began to join on to the idea of temperance because their workers coming in hungover or still drunk or not coming in at all because of alcohol was hurting production. And liquor began to be attacked as an evil monopoly. Now, originally prohibition usually only meant spirits, like liquor. Beer was considered to be not such a problem. You also have to understand that prohibition was racist. There were stereotypes that it was all the immigrants, particularly Catholics, and black folks who drank all the time. Now, studies have shown conclusively that everybody drank at about the same if you look at them as groups. But the stereotype was that it was all those other people who were using all the alcohol. Just like today, white people use drugs at a higher rate than black people, but unfortunately we have a stereotype that black people are using drugs and white people aren't. The political reformers saw the saloon as the heart of the machine, of the heart of the alcohol machine. By the way, the most federal tax dollars came from the tax on liquor. A lot of people don't realize that. We don't yet have an income tax. People who wanted an income tax, and these are progressive reformers who didn't like the tax on alcohol because poor people ended up paying a higher percentage of their income than rich people, therefore it was a regressive tax, and they wanted a tax that was progressive, meaning that it taxed the rich more than the poor. They wanted to move away from the tax of alcohol towards a tax on income like we have today. And so they began to get behind prohibition, not because they cared if you got drunk at all, but because they figured this would be a way to get what they wanted, a progressive income tax. Small government folks, people who were becoming alarmed post-Civil War at the massive increase in the power and the scope of the federal government, they believed by getting rid of alcohol, you would get rid of the federal government's main source of revenue, and so it was good for them. And of course, there were religious overtones. In 1873, the Temperance Union is founded by Frances Willard. By 1911, it has 245,000 members. That's the Women Christians Temperance Union. In 1893, a second organization called the Anti-Saloon League will form and work side by side with the WCTU. The Anti-Saloon League is the most powerful special interest group in American history. And by 1916, it's gotten 19 states to ban alcohol in one way or the other, including numerous counties. Here in Texas, it was done county by county, for example. World War I's anti-German sentiment was the final nail in the coffin. Germans were associated with alcohol, particularly beer, and just like when we go to war with people, when we started the Iraq War and France opposed it, people tried to stop calling French fries, call them freedom fries. The World War I equivalent of that, one of them is that alcohol now became associated with the enemy, and it gave a final push that prohibition needed. In 1917, Congress passes an amendment allowing Congress to prohibit alcohol. In 1919, the states approved this. And in January of 1920, the manufacture, transport, and sale of alcohol will be banned by Congress. This is called the Volstead Act. Billy Sunday, a great, well-known preacher of the day, he was actually a star baseball player who had quit professional baseball to go become a preacher. He'll say this at the big party. Well, I don't know if party is the right word because there was no alcohol. But he'll say this at the big celebration for the banning of alcohol. The reign of tears is over. The slums will soon be only a memory. We will turn our prisons into factories and our jails into storehouses and corn cribs. Men will walk upright now. Women will smile and children will laugh. Hell will forever be for rent. Well, as we're going to see, of course, it's not going to work out that well. But this is what people believed at the time. They thought they had kind of solved all mankind's problems by getting rid of alcohol.